Have you ever imagined sleeping with your own upside-down nacho? Do you wish you could grab a long-haired Australian and drink alcohol from their body? Maybe you're more interested in sitting on your imaginary underworld apostate's face, or just stomp me to the curb for writing such horrendous lines. Nachos go great with beer. Now you can and more with these fantastic overpriced items from the great range on sale in Nacho's Underworld Market. Your nachos are always best with beer. Pick up your very own upside-down pillow, throw an apostate on your stretch pants, or slap on some yowie socks and just walk all over me. Your nachos always go best with beer. So grab Australian mug, wrap your lips around it, and suck dry those glorious liquids. Everything in stock is limited because I get bored and change it up all the time, so get yours now. As always, ensure to thoroughly beer your nacho. Go to teesprings.com/store/nachos Underworld Market to grab your very own nacho now. There we go. G'day. How's everyone going? It's always good when you make sure your microphone is turned on. We're here having a bit of a discussion. I'm here with ExCultBaby. Say hello.
Hey. Hello.
Basically, we're just going to have a bit of a discussion about what makes JWs different to most general other Christianities, and how that sort of affects you as a child growing up in being different to everyone around, even though you're sort of the same as well. It's a weird little position because there's only generally speaking, there's only subtle differences, but JWs make a mountain out of a molehill out of them. So,
and they desperately want to be different anyway. So
yeah, absolutely. So g'day to everyone in the chat. It's great to see you. There's loads of cool people there.
Oh, Navardia says I need to turn my mic down. Is that better? Is that kind of...
try that.
Let's see. How's that sound, everybody? Better? Hopefully. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work on my leveling when you talk. Because I am pretty low. I can turn me up a little bit as well.
Okay, I'm backing off from my mic, everybody. I'm way over here.
Okay.
That's fine with me. I'll just sit back in my chair.
Yeah, it should be okay there. Hopefully. Apparently you were very, very loud. Wow.
Well,
Shit.
you know, that's just the effect that my voice has on people. I'm not surprised.
It's just that powerful. Yeah.
But hopefully this will be better. Okay.
And let us know if that changes and you need us to fix it. You know, let us know. We'll get on there. I can adjust each other sort of individually, vaguely.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be better. All right.
So something I didn't ask actually in advance was, did you have any that you were coming to the table? Like, did you have any things in mind on this topic that you wanted to start with?
As far as Jehovah's Witnesses wanting to be all different, I think if there's any particular thing I would point out, it's their aversion to so many mainstream Christian things. Like they specifically go out of their way to be like, oh no, we don't do that. You know, like the Trinity, the cross, the hellfire, going to heaven. Like it's just barely Christian, you know? They go out of their way, it seems like, to be like, well, we're Christians, but we don't believe really basic Christian things, except basically that Jesus is the Messiah. That's pretty much it. That's their qualifier for being Christian, but everything else is so different. So I would get into conversations with other Christians and, you know, they'd basically be like, oh, you know, well, we all worship the same God, just in different ways. And then I would ask my mom and she's like, no, we don't. Not really.
Yeah, they don't dig that whole idea. Because they're definitely for the concept that the all these other gods that people are worshipping are all through Satan, and you know, like even if there are these other gods in the Bible, they're under some sort of control, or you know, they're demons or something, you know.
Some silly stuff. I was just saying the other day on my other live stream how Jehovah's Witnesses claim that they're not superstitious, but they are superstitious just about different things. Like, they're very superstitious about demons, and pretty much anything could be demon-possessed. And, you know, if you go to a yard sale or a garage sale, you got to be careful you don't buy something that's possessed, because you don't know what kind of demonic shit goes on in other people's houses and possessing their furniture and teddy bears and stuff like that. So... yeah, I don't even know how to describe that.
Because I'd never experienced that part of it myself when I was in, but that's apparently something that I'm hearing a lot of lately, that it's very extreme, where, you know, as you say, like any sort of possession can be demon possessed, and they'd have to get rid of it, and like, not, as far as I know anyway, as far as like an exorcism or anything like that, because that's not really what they do, hey, but they'd have to get rid of it.
They'll just burn it. Like, my aunt told me a story one time when I was younger about somebody in her family, or maybe it was herself, got some sort of demon-possessed desk or something from a yard sale, and she ended up burning it because it was demon-possessed. It was like, in hindsight, that is just such a ridiculous story. Come on.
It really is, yeah. No, like, and to go to such extremes, it's quite weird.
Yeah.
I suppose they're not averse to any, you know, all sorts of destruction. Like, whenever one of their pieces of literature is out of date, they opt to destroy it if they can.
Yeah, that's super crazy to me. Like, how do you not realize that you're trying to like literally burn evidence that your views have changed? Like, you can't just accept like, oh, okay, that's what we believed before, this is it now. That doesn't quite make sense. Now I'm not going to think about that. I'm just going to burn the old literature.
Yeah, exactly. But basically, you might have the few that will get thrown and fade from that, but then in future generations they'll only find, the one storyline sort of thing. And so it's a way of basically controlling their entire,
the narrative.
The narrative, that's the word I was looking for, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm a dictionary.
I'm pretty much the opposite. I'm terrible with words.
Yeah. I was homeschooled, so my dad raised me on the dictionary is your best friend. So I can't help but know words. I was forced to know words.
Fair enough. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I used to be a bit of a dictionary sort of guy. Like it was always like a go-to, the dictionary and the thesaurus, whenever I needed some sort of thing in my English writing or anything like that. I know before you brought up the cross thing, which was number one on my list as well, and I obviously made that the thumbnail because it's something that it always seemed one of the most common things that would come up in conversation. Whether it's somebody asking and, just being like, what's the deal about this? Or if it's you bringing it up, I see that cross. Did you know that Jesus actually died on a stake, It's like they have a point of pride to be able to point that out, and that's their way of getting you into their way of thinking, especially when it's converting from one Christianity to JW. But what do you think about, had you ever caught yourself after leaving still thinking that was even an important point, let alone something that should be argued?
Oh yeah, I totally did. I basically still because I was pomey for a little while for there's a storm outside. I don't know if you guys saw that lightning.
Yeah, I saw a flash, yeah.
But I was pomey for a little while after I left, so I was still totally a believer, but I was just walking around oh well, this is what the Bible really says. I don't know about, and after a while that kind of changed to well, this is the interpretation that I was brought up with, because I had slightly less confidence in that being the truth as opposed to just being what Jehovah's Witnesses say the truth is.
Yeah.
So it kind of changed over time from being well, this is what the Bible really says, to well, this is what Jehovah's Witnesses taught me about the Bible. And as I did a little bit more research and had discussions with more people, that confidence definitely wavered. But yeah, there was definitely a while when I was just kind of walking around with my head up my ass, talking like I'm still a Jehovah's Witness, but being disfellowshipped and cut off from all other Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, damn. I was very much the same for years. After I'd actually walked away from the religion itself, I'd still believed in it all, and I'd still, be the first to proudly push every message they ever put out. Hey, and I was literally like that up until a bit under 2 years ago, and that was where I sort of got my head out of my ass.
Well, good for us for getting our heads out of our asses. That was just stupid.
Well, you don't know until you know,
Yeah. Yeah, but it's just so silly in hindsight, because it's we're sitting here preaching to folks still, and according to the theology that we're preaching, we're not getting into anything good. We're not living through Armageddon, so what are we preaching to people for still?
Yeah.
Do we think that we're gonna earn brownie points with God or what?
I actually had the notion for a long time that it was like I didn't care what happened to me, but at least I can help these people. For real. That's what I thought.
Yeah. I remember when I was very much living a double life. I tried dating a few people my age, and all the boyfriends that got serious ended up going to a meeting with me. I'd be like, "Oh, Mom, I invited my friend so and so to the meeting with us." And the one that was really serious, I took him to the memorial. So that was he did not enjoy it.
No, does anybody?
Yeah, no. And it's like I'm doing all this stuff that clearly contradicts the theology, but at the same time, I'm still trying to convert other people so that maybe I can make it okay for myself to be doing this. Because, if he's a Jehovah's Witness, then it won't be so bad. The crazy thing is, though, one of the guys that the guy that I got to go to the memorial with me was a trans guy. So it's like, I'm clearly trying to get you into something that's not going to be good for you. I don't know where I think this is going to go. Like, he definitely was never going to become a Jehovah's Witness, so I don't know why
Well done. And the memorial. So that's another one. Is that still supposedly the only celebration they partake in?
Yep. I mean, they don't call it a celebration. I mean, it's the most somber. Like, I explained it to all of my worldly friends. It's like, it's kind of the only holiday that we celebrate, but it's really not a celebration. Yeah. And then my friends that went to the memorial are like, yeah, that was the most somber, boring thing I've ever been to. Like, if that's your only holiday, that sucks.
Yep. Yeah. And it's like another point of pride for them, though, of course, where they'll always make that a talking point about they won't do this, that, and the other, and they'll, there's the pagan backgrounds and traditions to all these other holidays, and it all turns around to the same thing, being able to wrap you into their, ideologies. But it's just another one of those small little things that they, that's different. I don't know, like what, all these different things that, how does it affect you? Because you said you had, I keep going to say private school, homeschooling. So I imagine you wouldn't have had nearly the sort of social encounters where you're, as a little kid in school, sort of schoolyard, having to deal with these differences and explain yourself in the face of all these weirdos. And one of the most popular things from me was always to say, it's against my religion, basically. Like, I can't do that, it's against my religion.
I still ended up doing a lot of that stuff because even though I was homeschooled, my mother signed me up for a lot of things that were like basically activities with other homeschoolers.
Yeah.
Like, so there was a lot of meetups, there was a lot of co-ops, stuff like that. So I did interact with a lot of other kids my age, and half the time those kids were just as religious as my parents and me. But I remember one time I went to like this homeschooler gym class that met like once a week, and we would rotate through a bunch of different activities, and it was really fun. Even though it was only once a week, so it wasn't like a proper gym class, like who only exercises once a week in school. But I remember there was this one girl that I had started talking to, and then one time I tried to talk to her, and she like actively ran away from me, and I was like, what the heck? And then I asked her later, and she was like, basically, my parents don't want me to talk to you anymore. And I was like, oh. And then I told my mom about it. It was like, hey, I made this friend, but her parents told her not to talk to me anymore. And I realized it was because I was preaching to her that her parents told her not to talk to me anymore. And that was kind of the first time I realized that I was the way that Jehovah's Witnesses are told to preach to people basically sets them up to be isolated. Like, you don't even have to isolate yourself from people. They will isolate themselves from you if you preach to them.
Yeah.
Or if you insist on preaching to them, really.
You get put off by that sort of persistent preaching. And it's not necessarily like it's constant all the time. It's like any time, any chance they get, it will, that's what you'll get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, and it's like, you tell even the kids in the religion that it's their responsibility to preach to other kids their age, so they're just setting themselves up to not have any friends. And it was only much later in life when I met people, I met teenagers my age who, when I tried to preach to them, they were just like, oh, we're having a religious discussion. Okay, well, here's my views on it. And they enjoyed those conversations. So I kind of changed my tune from preaching to them to being like, well, this is how I see it in the Bible. And then they'd be like, well, this is how I see things, maybe from the Bible, maybe from some other source or their own thinking. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'm having this, like, in my head, I was still preaching to them, but I really wasn't. Like, I really wasn't preaching, but it was like, we're talking about religion and I'm telling them what the Bible says. And they're enjoying the conversation, and so am I. So this is much, much better. I'm not isolating myself anymore, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it took me a while to sort of get that sort of thing going on as well, where I realized, I suppose, how to talk to people about it without being a thing that I was sounding like I was preaching, because I was still trying to get that message across. But I obviously realized that I didn't want to be a pushy prick about it in any way,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I just, anytime it would come up, and I would use like sort of leading questions, and I'd still not realize that. It wasn't until after, well after I sort of got out of that whole thinking that I'm like, Jesus, I still wasn't really much better. Like, I thought I was doing something better, but it's like I just went up a little notch, but
Mm-hmm.
I still had a long way to go. And it's because it's so ingrained, like you're brainwashed for a lot of us from birth, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You kind of almost don't know how else to talk to people.
Yeah.
Like, you're just trained to look for and make opportunities to talk about the Bible. You almost can't not do it.
Because for the most part, the only other people outside of the witnesses that we'd see are people at the door where we're preaching. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's your social conditioning, how to talk to worldly people, or just anyone, basically.
I remember not only did I feel compelled to, to preach to people, even in just like people that I casually knew in conversation, but I remember if I let an opportunity pass me by, I felt really bad about it. Like, that's one less person that I could have helped to come to Bible truth, and that blood might be on my hands. So then if I missed an opportunity in a conversation, or if even somebody else in the room was having a conversation and I didn't insert myself into that conversation, I felt like I had to make up for it. Like, any time that the Bible came up, if I did not insert myself, I felt guilty about it.
And is this even after you become physically out, mentally in, or are you still in?
Not so much then, because I was like, I'm already fucked. How much more guilty can I feel?
Yeah, it's fair enough. Whoa, hello chat. I just realized I haven't been paying any attention to the chat. What are they talking about? They're throwing numbers around.
They're talking about the ratio of people watching to the ratio of people who've liked the video.
Oh, goodness me. Fair enough. Yeah, don't forget to like and share the show, and make sure you subscribe to ExCultBaby.
Thank you. Please do subscribe to me.
Hells yeah. Have you got any others that you had in mind? I had something that came to mind before, but I've forgotten it.
I know that initially we really wanted to discuss the Jehovah's Witness concept of baptism, as opposed to pretty much any other Christian's version of baptism. That seems like a good one.
Well, I do, because I still kind of want to get into a conversation about that and do an actual video on that, though, if you're up for
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I am, because that is
That
kind
can
of
be
its
a full
whole
topic on its own.
own topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's set that one aside for right now.
But that is definitely another thing that is different, and especially when you compare it to things like christenings, it's very different. Like, because there are different Christian religions that do the similar kind of, like the born again kind of baptisms and stuff. But I don't know necessarily, but I couldn't imagine they're quite as serious as the ones that JWs do with the full contract and, what's at stake, basically.
Yeah, because it basically is a contract, which is it's just so different from any other concepts of baptism that I'm aware of. Yeah, it's really different. Yeah, we definitely need to save that for its own video because it is a whole huge topic.
I did think of one that I don't know how different it is from other like Christianity. I don't know if there are others that do this as well, but the fact that they don't vote or they don't join civil like defense services or something, which I always thought was a bit unique.
I know that there are Christian denominations that are pretty much opposed to the government because they're like, the government has turned away from God. America has turned away from God. But that doesn't necessarily translate into them not voting as a doctrine, as far as I know, I don't know any other religious groups that completely abstained from any political involvement at all, as far as I know. Which that's definitely always been something that it definitely kept me isolated because I've always had political opinions basically that I couldn't express. Not only could I not express them, but I had no reason to learn about what was going on. So now that I actually am eligible to vote, it's like I've been thrown into this shit show and I have no idea what's going on or how I can change it because I don't know anything about politics or the government, really.
Exactly how you feel. Because I know so much more about American politics than Australian politics. I don't really know anything about Australian politics.
Well, you teach me about American politics then, because I don't know jack shit.
If you want to be a left winger, I could definitely help you out.
I am definitely a left winger. As far as my voting intentions right now, it's just like, just a Democrat, okay? Like, as long as they're gonna any improvement from Donald Trump would be gratefully accepted. Please, just a Democrat.
I think there'd probably be a good consensus on that.
Yeah, I don't care who the nominee ends up being. I'm going to vote for the Democrat, whoever it is. I barely even care. Just not Donald Trump.
I did see one meme or something today, like it was, "Don't blame me. I voted for the email lady." Well, that's pretty relevant for that vote. Like, it's an old sort of saying, repurposed, but it definitely works.
Yeah. It's like, I didn't have nothing to do with this. Don't blame me. Yeah, and I was surprised because even though I wasn't allowed to get involved in the politics when the 2016 election was going on, I was still following it. So I had my opinions, I just didn't tell anybody. Mm-hmm. But I remember when the announcement was made that Trump had been elected, one of my friends, who was actually my ex-boyfriend at the time, which is kind of funny, but he met me on my college campus. It was like, "Hey, did you hear who won?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "It was Trump." And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Are you serious?" I didn't even know how bad it was going to be, but it was just like, really? Who thought this was going to be a good idea? Like, I literally wouldn't have had to have heard a single one of his, huge social blunders. I wouldn't have had to have heard all the racist rhetoric and the build the wall shit, and I still would have been like, well, that sounds like a terrible idea. You know, like
Yeah.
I feel like that was just such a no-brainer. But
Yeah. That's how
I
the
guess
rest
it
of the
wasn't.
world felt. Like, looking in as third parties were like, how did that happen? Like, how did you guys think that was a good idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still don't know. It literally is like the embarrassment of the whole fucking country. It's just sad. We're all
Well,
just totally
the one
embarrassed.
saving grace is that on the world scheme, around the same time Trump happens, you got the blunder of Brexit and all of that happening. So it's like, you know, it's a good mix, like, where the world will sort of come away from this going, well, there's a bit of everybody fucked up there, you know.
Yeah, that's true. That's us help
You'd
a
hope
little bit.
anyway.
Yeah, it's like, well, Britain did some dumb shit too. I guess we're not the only morons out here. I
Yeah,
guess.
and we're not far behind in the moron department.
Mm-hmm. But at least they just have a knife problem, you know? Oh my gosh, we're getting way too into politics. This started out being about Jehovah's Witnesses.
There's nothing wrong with talking about politics.
Yeah, they say you're not supposed to talk about politics or religion, but we were already talking about religion, so we might as well talk about politics too while we're at
Yeah,
it.
exactly. I mean, we have the whole Leah channel is devoted to just pretty much politics and religion, so, you know, it can be done.
Yeah.
I'm going to run for 2 seconds to grab myself a beer. I'll literally not be very long, but I don't know, say hello to the chat or something.
I will. You go get your beer. How's everybody doing in the chat? How's everybody doing? It's 8:35 in the morning for me. I just rolled out of bed. I would love to go get a drink too, but like I said, it's like early morning, so I'd probably throw up if I had a drink right now. But I hope everybody else is doing good. Sounds like Nacho's back.
I am. I bet you're talking terrible, terrible things about me too.
Yeah, the moment you walked away, I was talking shit.
Of course.
Nah, not
It's the
really.
only way to do it. Hey, Doc. Oh, okay. So, politics aside, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
What's another one? What about, like, associations of people that you can or can't hang out with? Like, because I know there are other denominations that do similar sort of things, but we're pretty extreme in that regard.
Yeah. There are definitely denominations where it's more common for parents to be like, don't have friends who don't follow the same faith as you, but it's usually not doctrinal to any particular denomination or religion that you can't have friends outside of that religion. Like, it's usually encouraged, but not pretty much a requirement. Whereas with Jehovah's Witnesses, it pretty much is a requirement that you can't have friends outside, which is, yeah, that's always been difficult for me, especially because, like I said, I was homeschooled. So the Jehovah's Witness kids who went to my congregation all went to the same school except for me. So they were all friends with each other, and not only was I not socialized, so I didn't really know how to interact with them, I was much better at interacting with adults than I was with my own peers when I was in elementary school. And they had so much in common. They saw each other every day at school. They had the same classes, the same teachers, and I didn't have any of that in common with them. So there was pretty much just no chance of me making friends in the congregation. So all the Jehovah's Witness friends... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just thinking of a similar sort of thing, but in a different way, because I'm obviously at a public school, but I was the only permanent JW kid at the school. There was a couple that would be there for a year or so and go on, and half the time they're not even close to being my age, so we're not really going to be friends. And then it's sort of just like you sort of still get that seclusionary feeling, like, because you end up with no friends anyway. Like, it's not like you can make friends with all these other kids. You just have to sit there alone and watch them all run around, have fun, you know. Yeah. Back to you. Like.
Oh, I already forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh fuck.
I have ADHD and I haven't taken my meds today because I figured I'd wait until after this to take them. I don't.
Fair
Wait.
enough.
Okay. I left off at talking about the kids in my congregation. I think.
Yeah.
The friends that I did make, I met them at conventions and assemblies. So most of the time, when I met other witness kids I could be friends with, they lived like an hour away from me. So that was pretty terrible for me because I didn't know how to socialize. And half the time, the friends that I did have, I only saw them like once a year or a couple of times a year. So I just didn't know how to maintain friendships for the life of me. So it was like when I finally did like get out of that seclusive environment, I just barely knew how to make friends. And I was so used to just turning people down and not hanging out with them. It was like I barely know how to maintain a friendship even now. I feel like like I'm lucky to have friends who do understand my background in that area, and I have friends who it's like if I need something, I can text them and they'll text me and it'll be immediately like, boom, come over, I'll light some incense and some candles and get a glass of wine and you can cry on my shoulder and it's fine. And I have friends that I can be that close to, but I can also go weeks without talking to them and be like, that's totally normal for me to not talk to people I consider my best friends for weeks. Because that's just, I just don't know how to maintain friendships like that, I guess. I don't know.
It is though good that you have the friends that understand that. Because it's difficult when, because I have friends that like, I don't, like it's the same sort of thing, I won't see them for months and if not years sometimes on end, but then, you know, I know they'll always be there and I can always rock up and every now and then we do and it's a grand old time, you know. But there is certain things about, you know, my background that they like, I can tell them about it, but they don't really understand it. And I don't know if that's something on me not having thought that it was ever worth taking the time to talk about, or just not having seen them enough since in the last, 2 years. So, but that's, yeah, it'd be good to have somebody like at the moment. I suppose I've met people since becoming Nacho that now I can say that I can, rely on in that way, which is good. But it wasn't like that for the longest time.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I remember being, because you really can't associate with people outside. I remember I was a volunteer at my local zoo for pretty much most of my teenage years because it was like a teen volunteer program at the zoo, and it was great. And I met so many cool people. That was my first major exposure to the LGBTQ crowd because it turns out a lot of teenagers who care about animals are also gay for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's because people have rejected them, so they like animals now. I don't know what it is. But I met a lot of really cool, nice people there. And they would always invite me to stuff. And even when I said, oh, no, I'm sorry, I can't, for whatever reason, I'd either make up an excuse or basically just be like, look, my mom's not going to let me. They were cool and understanding. They wouldn't be like, oh, why don't you just come? Why don't you just sneak out? They were never the people that would try to encourage me to do something they knew would get me in trouble. They would just be like, okay, I understand. Well, here's my number and you can text me. And I always felt especially bad not being able to hang out with those guys because it was like, you totally get it. You're so understanding and you're so nice. And I wish that I could actually be friends with you. And I appreciate that you consider me one of your friends, even though we never hang out outside of this volunteer job. And it was always like, I want to be friends with people and I just can't. It really sucked.
Yeah, no, it's a frustrating life. That's for sure. G'day to everybody saying hello to me. I see you there. Miss Sassy and Santa Claus. I have Santa Claus in the chat, like how cool is that?
Wow.
Nevada asks a question: what happens when you get a job with worldly people?
You got to preach to your coworkers?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So you inevitably aren't friends with them because they're going to be like, okay, Karen, that's nice. Keep your Bible to yourself, please, and thank you.
Fucking Karen.
Yeah, yeah. You either keep it to yourself or you preach to them, and you basically have those two options. But either way, you don't become friends with people you work with.
Or you get a job like with a JW boss.
Yeah, those are always great. Because as soon as you, because basically, if you decide to leave, your job is also on the line.
Yeah.
Like, on top of everything else you're going to lose, you might also lose your job. It's the worst.
Why is Baby Shark going on in my chat? What the fuck? Who made that happen? Doorknob head. It was you, wasn't it? I blame you. Evil person. Nobody wants that stuck in their head in the morning or overnight.
It's true. I don't want to keep thinking about it for the rest of the day, and I'm sure Nacho doesn't want to be thinking about that right before bed.
Well, I'm trying to, go to sleep. Hey, one thing I didn't know exactly what sort of words or topics, but the specific words or phrases and stuff that would be like, not trigger words necessarily, but keywords that differentiate JWs. Because I couldn't think of any specific
loaded language.
Like that. In a way. Like stuff that you'd recognize whether they're actually a JW or not, or, especially with the new light, because I've heard that there are things that when little changes happen, obviously, if you use terms that are no longer relevant, you can sort of be seen as somebody that's obviously not still in the faith.
Well, I don't know what those words are anymore, maybe. Or maybe I do and I just don't realize it, because there's been so many, growing up in it, I've never, even though I know that there have been new light changes while I've been alive in the religion, I didn't really notice them because people would immediately act like that's always been the teaching. So I was just kind of like, I must have missed something, and just continued on. Because nobody's going to sit down and explain to the kids, like, hey, so this is what we believed before, but this has changed now. They would just proceed as if that had always been what they believed.
Of course. So, I wish I'd been able to think. So I should have pulled out a couple of the old books and gone through them. One obvious one. This is something I've also brought up: heaven, hell, and the 144,000. The 144,000 is not something that many other religions ever would say, and I don't know if they, or the anointed class, those sort of things that are very specifically, or generally anyway, specifically for a JW sort of talk, the way they would talk,
Yeah, the reason nobody else uses those numbers is because every other number in Revelation is metaphorical number, except of course for 144,000, because I guess that's too specific a number to be a metaphor.
It's so obvious, isn't it?
Obviously, that's the one that's a literal number.
Exactly, clearly. I mean, it says it in the 144 and the 1,000. It's exactly that encapsulates it perfectly.
Yeah,
or it was just a convenient, big sounding number at the time.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I specifically
we'll be dead before that number gets hit.
Or it's already been hit. I have a feeling that, if you really counted it up, there's probably been 144,000 Jehovah's Witnesses who have all sipped the wine, because isn't the number of people that are partaking going up? That's what I heard.
I'm not actually too sure. I haven't heard any which way. But it wouldn't surprise me if there was more, by count, 144,000 in total before the end of the 70s, when that, big first date, or not the first one, but that one then in the 70s was the big end date. Because they would have all been jumping the gun, so to speak, to try and ensure their way, in before the end of the time. So I figure that's when it would have happened.
I'm thinking. Oh, sorry.
No,
I
right.
have a feeling that and I know that this, maybe I'm getting my hopes up, but I feel like the more time passes, the more people are going to wake up because of things like, well, with the overlapping generation teaching, the end really should have come by now, or with it being only 144,000 anointed ones, the end really should have come by now, because by now it has to have been over 144,000. Things like that, where they have these limits of things, of how much something is supposed to happen or how long it's supposed to go on before the end's going to come. Once we've passed that, what justification are they going to use?
Well, it's the same thing.
I know that they're going to use something.
Yeah. It's like the whole generational concept now. And that's how they've pushed, I think they've added an extra 30 or so years to their timeline by going, it's not when the last of the 144,000 dies, it's those of the generation that are alive, when the last of the 144,000 dies. So they've ensured they've given themselves this extra generation gap, basically. And then they can, by that very definition of what they use as generational, they can just continue to do that for eternity.
And even that definition of a generation, that gap is closing. I think that I've thought about this for a little while, what would I say to a Jehovah's Witness if I met them now? Something small that I could say. And I think that I've narrowed it down basically to, okay, you guys believe in this, generation thing, blah, blah, blah. If the end doesn't come in the next 20 years, what are you going to do? Put the thought in their mind that if this prophecy that they have now does not happen, what are they going to do about it? Are they just going to keep believing? Because I think at least I would like to think that would raise some doubt, and they would either put their foot down honestly and be like, well, I'd stop believing it. If it didn't happen, then I would have the intellectual honesty to be able to say, okay, that didn't happen, so this must not be true. But I think a lot of them would come up with excuses, but then would it make them stop and think if their first response would be to raise excuses? I don't know. It might not. It's so hard to break through that cognitive dissonance and make people actually realize when there's a contradiction. But I don't know. Maybe it would help.
And it's hard to do it without getting, without having them put their defenses up as well. Two questions that I noticed in the chat. If women can be one of the 144,000, why can't they be on the governing body? And
because their tits would distract people during the JW broadcast. That's my theory.
Fair enough. There we go. That's answered. I actually always thought it was the concept is when they are part of the 144,000, they're genderless, they're angels. They're not of human form, so it wouldn't, they're no longer man, woman, or anything like that. Whereas the governing body are the human leaders or whatever it is, and something about women can't be in leadership or whatever.
Yeah, I always assumed they would basically become genderless as angels too. That was also my understanding.
Navadi asks, how do they know that they can sip the wine? In real life or in theory?
Yeah, those are two different things. They think that they just know. And here's the thing that really annoys me, because, okay, remember how I told you that I took my transgender boyfriend to the memorial? Remember me telling you that, right? He asked the same question. And the explanation they always give is basically, whether or not you're a man or a woman, right? So you just know if you're anointed. And of course, me explaining that to him
Yeah.
was like, well, if you're a man or a woman, right? Except, what you know about yourself, they wouldn't agree with.
Oh,
And that kind of raises the problem, I think, that perfectly illustrates the problem with the whole if you are thing. Because not everybody's going to agree on that.
Kind of funny, though. Oh, hello, and goodbye, Ola. I didn't see you sooner. I think we've gone through, because I know we mentioned earlier heaven and hell, but I suppose the detail bit of that is that, it's only at the 144,000 go to heaven, and there really isn't any hell. Which is interesting, because it's always a point that, like, atheists back in the day would, my point of view back in the day, these atheists would have that as a, it's all about fear, and, you either get to go heaven, or you get sent to hell. For most Christians, and as a JW, you're like, well, no, it's not about fear or anything. We don't, it's just you die, like, and that's just what happens anyway. Like, you don't lose anything. Like, it's like a win-win sort of. And then, well, that's what you convinced yourself.
Yeah, I've always tried to use that as a selling point, like, oh, we're not a fear-based religion. But I feel like the threat of being personally killed by God with a fireball is bad enough.
Yeah. But that's, you're convincing yourself that you're getting out of that.
Yeah, it's bad enough to be threatened to be personally murdered by God and his angels. I think that's bad enough as a fear, and especially when they have all those illustrations of Armageddon, those graphic depictions of fire raining down and the skies turning black and red, and the angels are all with their bows and arrows and flying horses, and everybody's screaming and running, and there's buildings falling and shit. Like, that's bad enough, I think, as a fear tactic. Like, yeah, it's not eternal torment, but it's the end of the fucking world. I think that's bad enough.
That's something that's always actually stuck with me too, even from a very, very little kid. The pictures is what I'd always pay attention to in the books. Like, I couldn't read back in those days, obviously. I was a little kid. And those pictures, those images are very graphic, and they really stick in your mind. Like, I will come across images in the randomest of places. Sometimes it's just random religious memes, and they're using an image that was in some JW literature that, I must have seen once when I was a little kid, and it'll just go boom back, and I'll recognize the type of drawing, and it's almost like PTSD.
Yeah. And Jehovah's Witness art is so specific. Like, I can recognize it anywhere. I don't know what it is about their art style that it just, it when you see it.
It is a very distinctive kind of art style, that's for sure. My book of Bible nightmares. It's very apt.
Yeah. I remember sitting in the meeting, and I obviously wasn't really paying attention to what was going on in the talk because I was like 8. But I'd be looking at my book of Bible stories, and I remember just sitting in the meeting and staring at the picture of Jesus nailed up on the stake. His hands are bleeding. He looks like he's in agony. You can see that the slashes on his side, not his ribs, from the whip. And I just was staring at it and just like, that looks like it sucks. And it's just like, in hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, that image was in a children's book. What the hell?
Yeah, they don't hold back when it comes to their art. Like, I wouldn't say it's like comic book gore, or not comic book, like, Mortal Kombat kind of gore or anything, but they don't hold back.
Yeah. There was actually XJW Analyzer did a video specifically about how horrible some of the art is in my book of Bible stories. So if you have never been a Jehovah's Witness and you have no idea what we're talking about, you should definitely watch that video because it highlights all the worst ones. including the image that I was just talking about Jesus. It highlights all the worst pictures. It's horrible.
You know, the worst one for me, I'm pretty sure it was in my book of Bible stories. I'd have to actually double check all of my facts at the moment, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think it was the picture of Jezebel, and she's got this, like, it's just as she's being captured and she's about to be put to death, and she's just making the most awkward, weird body position, and obviously with the style of art, it just makes it look really weird. And a face, because she's obviously meant to be in terror, and she's about to be thrown, in the lion pit or whatever it might be. I can't remember.
Yeah, she was about to be thrown out a window and fed to dogs.
I knew it was some sort of animal. Yeah.
Yeah, it was literally like the picture captures the moment before she's thrown out a window, and you can see in the picture the dogs waiting on the ground for her to get thrown out the window.
It is just the most, like, the whole picture is just something else. Like, that one did a number on me as a kid. I would always skip that story. And that's probably why I can't tell you all the details, because I'm like, nope, no thank you. I'll do the Revelation ones instead, like.
Yeah, and they make it seem like it's okay because the person who's about to be killed is depicted as evil, so that's fine.
Yeah.
It creates black and white concepts like that at such an early age of just like, oh, it's okay, this person's about to be killed. That person is evil. They're against Jehovah, so it's okay that they're about to be thrown out a window and fed to dogs. So
not a good
up.
It's not a good set of morals, that's for sure.
Man.
Spark Bomber, hello. Well, I'm actually out of my list. I've exhausted my list. So I don't know. Do you have any other ideas of different things that make it made it unique, different?
If we're gonna talk about any one last thing, I would definitely say holidays. And I know that there are other Christian denominations that specifically don't celebrate holidays with pagan origins, but I've never heard of any that don't celebrate political holidays. Again, that ties back into the whole politics thing, but it's...
Yeah, of course.
Like, I remember trying to explain to people why I didn't celebrate Thanksgiving, and like, what my more recent explanation was like, well, you know what? What's his face? Christopher Columbus, like, did a lot of bad shit, so why would I celebrate that? But at the same time, it's like, you can still eat pumpkin pie and turkey without without celebrating, genocide. So, like, trying to explain to people the pagan origins of holidays was like, some people were like, you know what? Okay, if you're really that, like, averse to getting involved in false religion, I get that. But trying to explain the political holidays was just like, really? The 4th of July? You don't want to celebrate the independence of our nation? Yeah, I mean, it's just a cookout. Come to our cookout. It's not that big of a deal.
Did you guys do, like, I'm thinking in school, but, like, maybe for you guys it'd be more like sports things where you do the ceremonies, and they have the flag ceremony thing, and like how currently at the sports thing in America, it's a couple of years ago now, but like with Colin Kaepernick and how he kneeled, he wasn't standing, and that was a big deal. Because as we're growing up as a kid, we'd every week have assemblies for the school, and they'd do the national anthem where everyone would stand, flag be up there, and you'd sing the national anthem. And we'd always have, like, as J-dubs, we'd sit down and we'd always have to explain to the teachers and stuff, so they all knew that, no, we can't stand for that, no, we can't, like, give any sort of due for the flag or anything like that, and all this sort of shit. Like, did that go along in the same over there, or is that
Mm-hmm. Whenever my parents took me to a sporting event, we would show up late on purpose, so we would skip
Just to
the
miss it.
national anthem. Yeah,
Nice.
we showed up late on purpose every time. And when it came, I didn't have to do a whole lot of that as far as like being in school or being around my peers, where I would be like, no, I can't salute the flag, I can't do the national anthem, because obviously I was
Getting
homeschooled, so I
singled
didn't
out
really,
in the
that
middle of
was pretty
hundreds of
rare.
other kids. Yeah, it's really embarrassing.
Yeah. But I can imagine that's pretty horrifying. I, yeah. Oh, one more thing. Blood transfusions. I don't know that there's any other denominations that have a problem with blood transfusions, as far as I know.
And every medical practice that involves full whole blood, isn't it? Like, I think they're allowed to do partial blood components now or something, but not the full blood component.
Which is just complete bullshit. I mean...
Yeah, they're trying to get out of a lot of litigation. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, and the fact that, before it was like, anything to do with blood is a no-no, and then after that had already killed people, they changed it. That's just... Oh, man, that pisses me off to no end.
You're preaching to the choir. This is not just after it's killed people, it's also after it's left people, with conditions that cannot be fixed, for the rest of their lives. Like, they might have been lucky enough not to die, but they're still all fucked up.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah.
I can't talk about the blood issue for very long before I get pissed off, because I've never been personally affected by it, fortunately. Nobody in my family or close friends or anything needed a blood transfusion, as far as I know, except for my aunt. But at the time, my aunt has had a lot of medical problems over the years. And when she was a kid, she got a court-ordered blood transfusion. But she survived because, it was court-ordered, so they had to do it regardless of whether or not she wanted to. So that's
kind of good.
Pretty much the only... Yeah, that's the only exposure I've had to it in my family. Unfortunately, the law stepped in and saved my aunt's life, so yay.
I've mentioned it a few times over the course of my being who I am and all, but I had a lot of complications at birth where basically they would have needed to do blood transfusions to operate to get me, give mum a C-section and get me out and give me all the operations that I would have needed. And so basically they didn't even give the option until I was already birthed, and they realized there were still worse complications. And they still never gave me blood. Like they went around, took me to one of the best, no blood guys, doctors there are, to put me through all the operations. But it still was one of those things where if it was given as an option when they knew something was wrong in the first place, they could have avoided a lot of the worst of what I deal with now. So it is very frustrating. Yeah. But anyway, that's a bit of a downer.
Yeah, that was not the note we should have ended on.
No. We got a friend whose daughter may have needed a blood transfusion who's Ex-Jehovah. It's not a good spot to be in, because it's one of those things where, like, even if you take it upon yourself and go like, no, I'm going to have this blood transfusion, you're then more than likely going to, get the boot from all your JW friends and family.
And the worst thing is they call it disassociation instead of disfellowshipping, which I think is even worse, because then they're like, oh, so by doing this, you've basically said you don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore, huh? You're leaving Jehovah for, like, saving your life. I think that that's even worse than disfellowshipping them over it, because they're acting like you making a decision to save your own life is you making the decision to publicly announce that you're no longer a Jehovah's Witness. And that's just such a dick move. I don't even know how else to describe it except that it's a dick move.
It is. It really is.
I mean, like, you can't go around taking, that's up to God when you die. You can't take that power out of his hands. You can't play God. So, a hint to sarcasm.
Yeah. Just a little. Oh, man.
Let's play the game. Huh? Every now and then I'll peek over at the chat and I'll be like, what have I missed?
Mm-hmm. Like, what the hell are they talking about now?
Yeah. Loki, have you got any other points that you wanted to make? Because I know that was meant to be the last one, so I just sort of...
I don't think I have any more. I think that I have exhausted my own brain list as well.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that. Alright, well, feel free to shut yourself out for a bit, I suppose. And we'll wrap up.
Okay. You guys probably all know I'm ExCultBaby. My Twitter is ExCultBaby. My YouTube channel is ExCultBaby. I make atheist videos. I also focus a lot on Jehovah's Witnesses, but I just recently did a video about the Mormon Church, which has a pretty racist history. I thought that video was pretty interesting, so you should definitely check it out. And subscribe, please.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure everyone knows who I am. Otherwise, if not, hello. It's good to see you. I don't know how you got here if you don't know who I am. But subscribe, I suppose.
That would be a good question.
Yeah. Oh, shit. All right. Well, that was lovely. Thank you very much for joining me. If, any more come to mind down the track, it'd be great to do a part 2 or something, because I know there's probably loads of other ones that'll hit us in the middle of the night or something. Like, fuck, should have brought that up.
Yeah, always does. Always.
Yeah, it's like that. Sleep deprivation. Huh? That's like my middle names.
NotJah sleep deprivation witness.
Exactly. It's all from all the non-witnessing I do.
Mm-hmm.
Love you, ExCultBaby, NotJah Witness, get screwed. Okay. Thank you too. Yeah, love you.
Thank you, Meryl.
Atheist Edge, you did. You just missed it. We're just about to say goodbye to everybody.
Well, I'm sure the playback will be fine.
Yeah, I hope so. I haven't had a chance to even... I shut down all my previews, so I don't know how it looks. So hopefully it looks good. But, alright, we'll wrap up. Many loves and much thank yous to everybody who showed up, and, the chat was on fire, which is always good. I'm probably going to end up reading through a bit of it later, just because I missed almost all of it, which is rare for me. Normally I pay attention to the chat, but, yeah. Alright, guys. What do I have to do? I have to press buttons, that's right. I'll catch yous all later. Bye.
Take care.
Oh God, what have I made? Nobody will want this stuff.
Oh wow, NotJah, is this your Teespring store?
Yeah, I just threw some simple, silly designs together quick. It's nothing special, just some funny, overpriced things on NotJah's underworld market.
Oh, look at this. This is super cool. You can get a hoodie and many other styles of shirts.
Not just shirts, but some great Yowie design stretch pants too.
And who wouldn't like an awesome coffee mug?
Or an angry Nacho throw pillow for your couch. Everyone wants one of those.
Payment online is the best way to pay you.
Well, heck,